approach and firm countermeasures and stance, they say, has been highly effective. And a lot of this is because China got most of President Trump's tariffs off without actually having to do a whole lot. So China, of course, has to lift its own counter tariffs, but it's been quietly giving exemptions to a whole lot of companies. And then as part of this agreement, China has to suspend or cancel non-tariff measures against the U.S. So this would include the ones like tighter rare earths, tighter curbs, export curbs on rare earth minerals that are important for the U.S. industry. Another point is that they both have to agree to set up a consultation mechanism. So on the point about the non-tariff measures, they have to lift them, but there's no timing. There's no method. So, China doesn't necessarily have to commit to anything here. And then in terms of the consultation mechanism, one of the long-standing complaints among many in the international business community here is that China often acts like talking is action. And so they make a lot of promises, and there's a lot of promise fatigue, but that they don't actually do anything at the end of the day. So this is just playing right into China's playbook. And then the third point I would make is that China could present itself as though it's the more responsible actor here. And in fact, in the statement for the Commerce Ministry, they took a jab at the Trump administration, saying that the U.S. should completely correct, they say, its unilateral tariff practices. Again, presenting itself as more responsible compared to the United States.
Yeah, that doesn't exactly sound like a country that just capitulated to Trump's demands, does it? But we've seen this movie before. Back in 2020, Trump announced his Phase 1 trade deal with China with similar fanfare. He claimed it was going to be transformative. China was going to purchase an additional $200 billion in American goods. Guess how much of that $200 billion China actually ended up buying? Zero. Not $1 of the additional purchases that they promised. And now Donald Trump expects us to believe this vague consultation mechanism is going to yield more real results? I don't think so. But this is what Trump does. He creates a problem that didn't need to exist, partially walks it back, and then demands credit for solving the crisis that he manufactured. It's like someone who punches you in the face, then stops punching you and wants you to thank them for their kindness. You don't get a military parade down Pennsylvania Avenue for stopping your own disastrous policy. You get one for your birthday, apparently. Remember, Trump himself said this about trade wars, quote, "Trade wars are good and easy to win." Well, 4 years and 2 administrations later, he still hasn't won anything. The truth is that Donald Trump caved because his tariffs were backfiring spectacularly. Shipping companies were reporting that container traffic from China to the US had essentially stopped. The National Retail Federation was warning that imports on the second half of 2025 would fall at least 20% year over year. JP Morgan was predicting a 75 to 80% drop in imports from China. And all of this was threatening to hit Americans where it hurt most, their wallets. Goldman Sachs analysis showed that inflation was set to effectively double to almost 4% by the end of the year because of Trump's trade war. With elections coming up next November, Trump and his party obviously can't afford a recession and skyrocketing prices, so he backed down and is now trying to spin that as a win. But make no mistake, there is no actual deal here, just a temporary pause and a promise to keep talking. What's particularly striking is that this deal doesn't address any of the substantive issues in our trade relationship with China. Nothing about intellectual property theft, nothing about forced technology transfers, nothing about subsidies to Chinese state-owned enterprises, nothing about China's manipulation of its currency. And even from our perspective here in the US, wasn't this whole thing about reshoring manufacturing jobs back to America? Correct me if I'm wrong, but did we do that in the last month? There is no long-term plan for anything, just daily volatility that betrays the fact that Trump has no idea what he's doing other than building the plane as he flies it, which, if I'm not mistaken, is exactly what Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has recommended. But the real victims in all of this are American consumers, American businesses, and American workers who have been dragged through economic turmoil because Donald Trump does not understand how tariffs work. He still seems to believe, after all of this, that China pays the tariffs when in reality, it is Americans who foot the bill through higher prices. I've said it before and it's worth repeating every single day. When Trump imposes tariffs on foreign countries like China, they are not paid for by those countries. They are a tax imposed on importing companies, and the companies don't eat those costs. They transfer them to American consumers, meaning us. Donald Trump's tariff on China is in actuality a tax on Americans. So the next time that you hear Donald Trump boasting about his historic trade deal with China, remember what actually happened. He created an economic disaster, partially backed away from it, and now wants credit for being a genius negotiator. This isn't the art of the deal, this is the art of the cave. And unfortunately, American consumers and businesses are the ones paying the price for Trump's economic illiteracy. Before you go, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. The subscribe button will be right here on the screen. But second, the reality is that we are now in a political environment where this administration can lean on any of the social media platforms to suppress certain voices if they don't like critical coverage. That means my longevity here is in the hands of a few tech billionaires who are already making it clear that they are willing to cater to this administration. To that end, signing up for my newsletter is a way for me to reach you directly if that ever becomes necessary. I'll put the link right here on the screen as well, so please sign up. It's free, but there's also an option to do a paid subscription if you'd like to support me and my team. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.